What's up guys, Kyle at Fortune Off-Road. In this video we are putting some new suspension in the back of the Jeep and we're moving the axle back 3 inches. Oh! So we're stretching the rear of the Jeep 3 inches, and we also have some new leaf springs to throw back there. Nothing special, they're 3.5-inch BDS. I believe the springs that are on there right now might be an older version of BDS leaf springs, but I think they're only 2.5, and I think this one on the passenger side might even be broken. We'll see when I get it out, but the whole Jeep's kind of leaning to the right now. It'd be interesting to see why that is. So one of the first questions is, why are we stretching the rear axle in the Jeep? Well, I'm a fan of wheelbase. Jeeps don't have a lot of it, so trying to get a little bit more of that wheelbase to help out with the climbs. But also we have 1 tons to throw into the YJ eventually, and the whole point of that is so we can run some 40s or bigger. We can't fit those tires in the back, we're just running out of room. It's actually to the point where it's touching the tub, so we can't put a bigger tire on there. The other big reason is because I want to put a doubler in the Jeep eventually. It looks like we're probably going to do a 231 doubler, and you know that's going to give us 7.4 to 1 in the YJ, which is just crazy low transfer case gears. The problem with that is it's going to extend the transfer case package about 8 or 9 inches, and we just won't be able to fit it in with the way it's set up right now because the drive shaft will just be way too short. So those are the reasons why. I've got some new hangers. I'm gonna start tearing all this stuff apart, see how it goes. So I've got pretty much everything removed, cut off the old spring hangers and welded on some new ones. These are moved at 3 inches. We got a little bit more to cut off up there and clean up on the frame. Got everything off the axle, and now I've got these 6-inch shackles back here. They're going to be pretty close to this reinforcement on the bumper, so I might have to cut some of that out. And then I also got some 7-inch shackles in case this angle gets weird. If this is too close or I have to pull the spring up to put it in the shackle, I'll have a longer version, just 1 inch longer, that might give it a more natural angle. I'm gonna let this primer dry. I'm gonna go pick up some hardware from the store right now. I've always had these ones with the Zerk fittings on them, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really good at greasing them up. So I think what I'm gonna do is just put a generous amount of grease on some regular bolts, go to the hardware store and pick them up. The ones in the back, I've sheared the Zerk fittings right off. Not very useful when they're gone. The first time we did this stretch, we used this. It's a like a 1/4 inch thick plate that moves the center pin 1 inch, or in this case you could do a 3/4 inch, you know, front or back. So that's how we moved it back 1 inch the first time, and then we had to drill a new hole in these U-bolt plates that would accommodate that stretch. So one of the problems I had with this plate, you can see I've had to re-weld it here, and you can kind of tell it's bent up a little bit. So that's been a problem. Then I think generation 2 from Rough Stuff came out with this support plate that you can weld on the bottom. Now, one thing that's kind of weird about this is it really only works if it's centered. If you have the stretch like I do, you got to watch out because the nuts that go in here are really big. So this thing still has to be pretty much centered down the middle. And then you also have to leave enough room for the threads to come through on the center pin. But we got this welded on. Got to throw some paint on this too. Probably the worst part about dealing with leaf springs, in my opinion, is this. The U-bolts. These U-bolts, especially when they're spring under, so it's pointing down like this, I had to cut these edges off and kind of chamfer them because they were just, the threads are so messed up. And if you don't realize it and you try to take the nuts off, it'll just destroy the threads and you have to get a new U-bolt. These ones are special because if you notice, the threads start right here. They start super early, so you can use it with a super low profile plate like this. I don't know many companies that make an option to do spring under with this much armor and this much thought into the parts, because if you use a normal U-bolt plate, the threads don't start till like down here, so you wouldn't be able to tighten it up. cool option for us spring under guys though. Got everything bolted up in the rear, new U-bolts in, chopped them up so they fit. Now I got a bunch of new hardware like I was talking about, but I didn't get enough of the washer, so I have to go back. But before I start doing all that, I'm gonna take these jacks out and these ones under the axle and put the tires on and see how everything's sitting, just to see if there's anything that's gonna go wrong before, you know, I start bolting everything up and solidifying this part of it. I got to make sure that the suspension's good and these shackles aren't going to be resting on the frame and stuff like that. So here we go. So you can't fix one problem without creating another. And this is pretty much what I thought was going to happen. You can see the shackle right here is clearing this part of the frame and bumper. But, you know, just for now, once this axle moves up, it probably will get really close to that. But anyways, let's look at this side. You can see the shackles actually touching the bumper. And when I take the bumper off, it can be touching the frame. So something's got to give. And after putting this on, it would appear that the amount of lift I have in the rear is a little bit less than I thought it was going to be. So I could use another ½ inch or so, maybe an inch. And I want to run a 7-inch shackle on the back. Right now, if the shackle went straight, it wouldn't be able to clear. So I'm gonna have to cut some of this, and I've really got to look at it because I don't know how much I can get away with cutting before we run into some weaknesses, especially since the gas tank and everything. The gas tank is supported by all of this metal up here. So that's next on the list, I guess. Here's a look at the new springs in. Still pretty good amount of clearance with these U-bolt plates. Not bad, not bad. We're getting there. Getting this tire carrier off the back was a huge pain in the butt because of the new tank and the way that the bolts go in to hold it in on the back. I could not get it off without dropping the tank, and everyone knows I'm not going to do that again. So I ended up using a Sawzall to just cut through the bolts, and we got the tire carrier off. This is a Smitty built carrier. It's been great, rated up to a 35. We've been wheeling it pretty good with 38 on there, and it's held up. Part of the issue is there's just too much going on back here right now. And now that the leaf spring hangs out behind and the shackles need that extra room, it had to go. So I notched out a couple areas right here to let this shackle swing back. When I go to a 7-inch shackle, don't know if this will even be enough room still. I might have to modify it further, but I need to clean this up, weld it. I want to weld all these gaps and try to get some strength back there. And then eventually we will plate this whole thing with some steel to just reinforce it a little bit, because I did take a good amount off of it. This departure angle actually looks pretty good without the tire carrier and without the bumper. It's not bad. All right, so what's next on the list? We've got this right here, right? When this tire moves up, it's gonna need a lot more room, and eventually I'm gonna get some Genrite aluminum stretch fenders, probably just the 4-inch one. So the cutout will be centered, and then, you know, I just cut out a little bit more to make it work. This part is a success because it's one of the reasons why we needed to do the stretch, to fit a 40 in there when we go up to that size. And even for the 38, it's been rubbing up here. It's rubbed so much, you can see it's kind of bent some of that metal. Now it's definitely gonna rub in the rear. I can't cut it out yet because I don't know how far up it needs to go, and I don't know how far up it needs to go because we don't have bump stops in. So I'm gonna end up just building some bump stops, hopefully some adjustable ones, kind of where that stock bump is up there, something that I can move up and down depending on how much flex I'm getting out of my suspension and what size tire I'm running. Still have some more stuff to clean up when I get around to it, just the rest of these brackets that were the spring hangers before. My ARB air supply line up there is pretty tight, so I'm gonna get some slack in that. And then obviously the drive shaft is about 3 inches too short now, so we're gonna go get a new drive shaft made, and that is the other part of why we're stretching it. So the 3 reasons were fitting bigger tires, getting more wheelbase for stability on those climbs, and then lastly to see if we could fit a doubler in here, a 231 to 231 doubler. I really just don't know if that's going to be possible though, because when you look at how short this drive shaft is, I mean, it could only be about this much shorter. I don't know, that's about 3.5 inches or so. When I go get this one lengthened for this portion of the build, I'm gonna ask the shop, like, what is the shortest drive shaft you can throw in here? If you look at this angle, this is a really good angle. I mean, it's almost straight, which is kind of crazy. But the other problem is this skid is dropped. I don't know what that is, about 3 inches, maybe 2.5 inches. I want this whole thing to go up so I can get that ground clearance back, because I'm getting hung up on this skid a lot and I'm kind of tired of that. But can we fit the 231 doubler in here? Pretty much everybody says it's a no-go. I'm thinking it's a no-go also, just because it's going to be 8 inches longer. And like I was saying, in this drive shaft right here, we only have a few inches we could lose out of it unless they can, you know, make this slip portion a little bit shorter. So when I go talk to him tomorrow, I'll see if this is doable. And if it's not, it's a bummer, because that's as far back as this axle is going to go, and I don't want to move the engine forward, and we're not going to do any transmission swaps or anything like that. So got to find another way forward to get some more gearing. Another option would be to get like an Atlas 5-to-1, which is pretty good. That put this crawl ratio up around 100. But if we do the 231, that crawl ratio is like 144, which is sick. So we've got a lot more work to go. We've got to do shackles, shocks, bump stops, new drive shaft. So it's quite the list. Supposed to go do the Rubicon this weekend. Pretty sure it's not going to happen. Life of a blue collar worker. All right, man, keep going. Thanks for checking out this video. Stay tuned for the next one. We're going to keep going on this. And then if you want to see any of the other things we've done to the Jeep, just check out the YJ build playlist on our channel. You can see since this thing first showed up at our house, all the stuff we've done to it. It's a lot. I was looking at it the other day. It's like a completely different Jeep when you look at it now versus when we got it. All right, guys, catch you in the next one. See ya.